So I'm Cynthia. I'm the host of the reality series CPS the Horror Stories. Not an attorney or a social worker, but I am a mom whose children were removed illegally by Child Protective Services. After 2 years of fighting and finding an attorney, I finally did get my children back. But that doesn't mean that we still don't struggle with the traumatic events caused by Child Protective Services. So now I have this platform to let parents and family members come on and share their CPS horror story. So Laurie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Laurie. I prefer the name Longo. That is not my legal name. But Longo is actually my mother's maiden name. But my first name is Laurie.
Okay. I like that. I like the last name.
Longo. Well, yeah, my mother's maiden name. So it's Italian, obviously. It's Italian. So
that was my same thing. I don't want to say it for protective reasons, but I'm Sicilian. That's where my family comes from.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We actually found out recently, my mother went into ancestry.com and found out that we actually have some Egyptian that we never knew about.
It's weird. You do those.
Yeah, when you do those, you actually see a lot. But interestingly enough, it seems like the majority of both my father and my mother's side tend to be a lot of Russian, Czechoslovakian, everything, basically Eurasian, interestingly enough. So it seems like even both my parents did not have as much Western European as they thought they did. That we're actually more.
Where do you live now?
Well, I live in Georgia right now.
Okay.
Live in Georgia right now. But the case is in North Florida. So it's
Did you call on the radio show recently?
I did not.
No.
Huh. No, I did not. But
person who is same states has a case like that.
I am not surprised. North Florida does have a lot of issues, and when you do things like go to the Florida Pro Bono website, they do not have any information for people. When you go to legal aid societies, they do not help people, and they say that they have too many cases to take. So in North Florida, yes, they do have a lot of issues. I've had consultations with, I can't imagine, almost dozens of attorneys. Maybe, I'm probably reaching close to 100 of just free consultations with attorneys to ask them what to do next. Essentially in this case, in my case, I have no history of alcohol, no drug abuse. The long story short is that we are domestic violence survivors. We had gone basically tricked by Florida DCF. They had stated that they would help us find resources as survivors. And instead they showed up with 2 armed police officers in the Department of Health of St. Johns County with my ex-husband, removed my children screaming out the door. So in other words, they basically betrayed the trust, stated that they would help. We arrived in a place in order to get those resources, and then they showed up with these armed police officers. And I got on the phone with my attorney. The attorney did not help. Essentially, the attorney stated, well, we can file a motion, but it's not like I can go after the police officers. I said, well, wait a minute. They just kidnapped the children. And he said, well, we can file a motion.
So you went to get assistance?
Yes, we went to get assistance, which is the basis for the what the attorneys and the journalists for the class action lawsuit said would be the basis of mine, is that I believe it was fraudulent. I forgot what the term was. But basically that they do not carry out their services as they say they will, essentially, and I would have to find that term for you again. They had a specific one where they said, this is why you qualify for the lawsuit. And it is through an organization called Save Our Kids. Yep. And so we're suing the United States government. And I believe, I wish I knew the number of parents at this point that they have that are actually, working on our affidavits at this point. But they have already submitted the lawsuit and they're waiting for it to be accepted. And we're going through many affidavits, many drafts. So every Monday we have meetings to sort of go through that. But there are interesting pivotal points of the case, but I don't want to override you. So if you have questions instead, that might be easier
Okay.
than telling you every twist and turn.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of interested in a lot of it, most of it, all of it. Sure. Let me think of a place to start. So what blows me away, number one, because I hear this quite often, is we go for help, which irritates the heck out of me, because who are we supposed to trust when we're in this situation? And I don't know if you've heard my story, but my story is very similar. I was also involved with domestic violence, but due to my health issues, there was not a safe house or shelter that would allow me to be there with my children because of my health issues. But then when you reach out for any kind of help and you give your information, you're done.
Yeah.
You're now in the system and you are done. Yeah. And what is crazy to me is the accusation of just because you're the victim of domestic violence, you are a participant and you're now held responsible for what happened to you and not protecting the children.
Right. And it sounds like it's completely, wow. It seems like we just came from the same page of the same book, Cynthia.
Yeah.
Sounds like that's the same page of the same book, except that it was just North Florida.
Yep.
We had, and it was the same situation. He had strangled me on September 11th, 2016. I had testified to that in court with the judge, and the judge had ignored it simply because I was too afraid to file a police report.
Oh, see, I called the police.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So this was my. Can you see it or no?
Yes, I can. Homemade assault rifles pot found during Mentone. Is that how that's pronounced?
Just Mentone. But this was my house.
Mentone raid.
Yeah. So I called the cops because those guns were going to be used to do something to me and my children. They were hidden. I had no proof that any of this happened. And the police and courthouse refused to give me any type of protection.
That is unbelievable. That is unbelievable.
I went for help, everything. Nope, nothing. And then after my kids were taken, I went back to the house. The safe was wide open and there were they all were. And so then
this is unbelievable.
I called cops and had proof now. But
that's scary.
Very.
That's scary. That's frightening.
He was on meth.
Yeah, that's bad too. Because isn't that like where you can, sort of snap,
just a little. Yeah.
Right. Just basically whenever you want without thinking. Right.
Yeah. I suppose it's without thinking, but I feel that there's thought to it.
Well, now, right. Yeah. Not to excuse. No, it's not to excuse the behavior. Right. No, of course not.
So in my case, couldn't get help, reached out, did everything I could, literally ran away from home, ended up in the hospital, kids were taken, and that is my story. So I'm listening to you and there's so much familiarity there, and it drives me nuts because it's like, who do you trust? They say if you're not doing these steps, you're not protecting your kids. Right. But then when you're doing the steps, somehow you're in the wrong as well. Right. So you go ask for help and they take your kids.
Yeah.
And what people don't understand is it isn't like they show up and they have a nice conversation and they walk out quietly with your kids. What people don't understand is your kids are freaking attached to your body and they're being literally ripped from your arms.
Yep.
Pulling at your hair. I can't tell you how many clothes were either ripped or stretched from visitations. Just horrific.
Yes, and that is what happened. I mean, my daughter was actually taken. She was kidnapped when she was 2 years old. She was still nursing. The judge made an illegal ruling on the stand and stated that he did not want me to nurse her, which is actually illegal on the federal, even on the federal level, that's illegal.
Yep.
And he stated that in open court. And she would do things like my children did their own protests, just like your kids, obviously, taking off her socks and shoes, staring the monitor straight in the face as she's taking off her socks and shoes, saying, "You are not taking me away from my mother." And my 2-year-old daughter would say this. She's 5 now. And they've spent so long in the abuse that, I'm afraid, they could possibly have traces of, especially her, but traces of, even Stockholm syndrome. I think that's a possibility. When you're attached to the person who abuses you or the person who kidnaps you, it is quite possible that she has that. She will try to defend him, but at this point in time, there are a lot of illegal things happening. I'm paying to see my children.
Yep.
I just let go of my last attorney because this attorney was basically sitting there for 6-7 months, constantly contacting, saying, "When are we going to schedule a hearing? We need to establish a parenting plan for my daughter." And just there would be just not any communication. And I said, "No, I'm letting this contract go." And so now I'm basically on the search for another one, but I've invested basically in multiple organizations at this point. I have 2 organizations and I'd like to find an attorney. But there are a lot of different things. Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard, one of the things that I have been working on, and it's finally together, is a website. It's called CPS Attorney Rolodex. And what it does is it connects families with attorneys in their county. So right now, anybody who's listening and yourself, you go on there, and if there's not an attorney on there in your area, you put your information in, then you get notified when we have an attorney that is interested in your case. There's nothing like that on the internet.
There's nothing like that because it's all secret, right? It's all secret. But this person,
it's here now.
That is awesome. That is definitely something I would use. Definitely. I'm definitely going to take a look at that. But there are many twists and turns in the case. My daughter was, after actually escaping, part of the reason why we had escaped the apartment that we were living in with my children, I had told them to get into the car, was because he was registered with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children for kidnapping my daughter while she was nursing. They stated that all the information that I had given them was enough for them to open a case. I have that affidavit for you. I have all that documentation. You can take a look at it. It's signed by the CEO of that time. He was John Bischoff. And she was assigned a specific number. They had asked for his license plate, what he looks like, photographs of my daughter. I mean, it was the complete case. This woman, Meredith Morrison, was the case manager for that. They had stated that they had been trying to call his phone, and I believe they scared him to the point that he brought her back to the home. Keep in mind that this was after he had strangled me in 2016. This was actually pretty much exactly a year later, September 2017. We ran out the door, and I did try to contact, domestic violence shelters, and just like you, they always say they have no room. There was nowhere to go. I didn't have family I could trust nearby. And the only reason why we were able to walk out the door was because I had been attending a divorce care class at my church and had told all of the church members the situation, and they had given us a safe house. Essentially, they'd given us a safe house. I left for the safe house, and yes, all of this was testified to in court. All of this documentation has been submitted to the court and ignored. All of it. All of it was ignored. All of it. Now, with all the attorneys that I've spoken to, they say that their theory is that it was because he was a former police officer.
Your ex?
And the judge, yes. And that the judge probably empathized with him, and it's probably bias. That it has to do with my ex-husband, being a former police officer from Dayton, Ohio.
So tell me,
how did
he end up with the kids? That's what I want to
know. This is what was, barely ever explained by any attorney that I hired, and I've hired about 4 or 5 private attorneys. But essentially, like I said, Sky and I, were continuing to go to pick up my son from school as usual. There was one day when an administrator came to the window and stated that DCF was at the school to talk to me, and I had refused. The administrator kind of strong-armed me. Went inside. This DCF worker, tried to get information out of me, and I said I would not give any information without an attorney with me, and I absolutely would not speak to them. And I said, absolutely not. I will not talk to you. I want my son. Eventually, they did. I don't know if it was, there were certain forms of manipulation, but they ended up bringing other workers into the mix. And these workers sort of made it look like they were going to help. Oh, no, we're simply trying to help. We're simply trying to help, stated that they had those programs. And like I said, kidnapped them with 2 police officers in St. Augustine, Florida. And that was September 2017. So it was pretty fast. As far as how he got them, after I had filed for dissolution of marriage and we had gone into the safe house, he had also, as retaliation, filed a restraining order against me, trying to paint me as the abuser. So he asked for an injunction. Yes, I kid you not, Cynthia.
No, my smile comes from, and my shaking comes from understanding. Yeah. Like I was also called the crazy one, the one on drugs. I had to do drug tests. I've never touched a drug in my life.
I did it too. In fact, I don't know if that was the right move, but I don't know how you did it. But I had actually volunteered to do the drug test even before they opened the dependency case.
Yeah, I
said, absolutely, I'll do it today. You want me to do it today? I said, I'll go right now.
Yep.
I'll go right now. I did. And, I had former state attorneys who were fighting them. And, I had one really great attorney who had filed emergency hearings because at one point my ex-husband had fallen into a prolonged coma. And the children, since they had been placed with him during the dependency case, the judge had written out an order that what they did was unlawful and highly disfavorable. And I have a document to show you that as well. That the judge had reprimanded DCF in an order stating that they had no right to move my children to non-relative former neighbors without my knowledge for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. He said, and in fact, the court reporter should have something that's actually written out of that emergency hearing where the judge had stated, in 25 years of being on the bench, I have never seen you folks move a child to another home without a shelter hearing. I have never seen you do that. The attorney at that time, Cooper, stated, we concede. but the judge still did not bring them home.
Wow.
He still did not bring them home. Still did not bring them home. I had an assistant state attorney who had forced a dependency trial toward the very end, where the case manager had stated and admitted that I was substantially compliant according to the Florida statutes. And obviously, when you're substantially compliant, the law is that you gained reunification, that you are reunified with your children. Still didn't happen. The judge still didn't do it. And when I talked to attorneys, when I had read the final order had stated that he had denied reunification, as far as my understanding, unless there was something I was missing. He had denied reunification because of a lack of full-time employment. And every attorney that I spoke to in Florida had stated that that was an illegal ruling. That was an illegal ruling. They say you cannot deny reunification in a dependency case based on finances. You can't. There is nothing in the Florida statutes that states that. And in as I had told DCF, the idea that they were not being consistent with unsupervised visits, and we did have them, but they kept going back and forth. So we would have supervised visits, unsupervised visits, supervised visits. And I told them, the fact that you're not being consistent, I'm telling you right now that something is going to escalate. He's going to escalate again, and he is going to hurt the children. Eventually, he did assault and batter my son, March 7th, 2019. 2 months later, they closed the dependency case. My lawyer forces a dependency trial. They admit I was substantially compliant, and the judge denied it. I had gotten 4 out of 5 done, and the only reason why I did not get the 5th part of the safety, even though everyone out there knows it's not a safety plan,
Right.
that it's not real.
Yeah.
Everybody out there knows that it's not a safety. That's not what it is. But even though I did not get all 5 done, because there was a counselor who had stated that she was afraid that I would create parental alienation in the future. She's not a harm to my children, but she may create a sort of alienation with the father in the future, even though I was very clear with everyone along the road that they are living in domestic violence. There are videotapes that are being hidden, and I am being denied the dependency case records, even as a party to it. The courthouse does not want to give any information to me. No videotapes of the supervised visits where the children said that they were afraid to live there. They will not give me any videotapes of my 3-year-old daughter saying that he's a monster, hiding under chairs, stating that something's going to happen, Mom. They won't show those things. Oh, they don't talk about those things. I talked to these people. I went to every single counseling session for both my son and my daughter. Every single one. I believe there was only one. I think there was only one visitation I ever missed. I think there was one. And I think that was like a counseling, or that was like a clerical error. But I was there. A year and a half, they stretched it. I had lawyers looking at them and stating, and I'm sure you've had that too.
Mine was almost 2 years, and I had supervised visits for pretty much the whole time. And every time I would get ready to transition into unsupervised or overnights or weekends or whatever, a new social worker would come on my case and have to restart the whole thing. Every time I had proof of any type of abuse or misconduct on where my children were staying, and it was a family member's house because that's who kidnapped my children.
Wow.
Yeah. They would tell me I was either stalking or creating, I was the one causing it. And I'm like, so I'm causing the abuse that's going on in that home way over here in my own home? How is that possible? There was never any abuse when my children were placed with me.
Right. And they never go over that, right? They never go over that in those cases, Cynthia. They don't. Never ever talk about that. They never ever talk about the life before the case was open. They never talk about that. Every single parent that is hit with this, that are so many of them just trying to do the best that they can.
Yeah.
You know, and they really are just trying to do the best that they can, but they don't talk about that. They don't talk about the parents who take their kids to church, pick up their kids every day from school. They don't talk about that, do they?
No, they
don't. No, they don't. No, they don't. And you know, like I said, the first accusation from them was that they were afraid because of the domestic violence that they placed the children into, by the way, that was afflicted against me, that I would have mental health issues. That was that was the first accusation. That was debunked, essentially. My attorneys would look at them and say, she has anxiety and depression because she is away from her children.
But then see that, and I believe one of the moms that's watching that I interviewed before, we were talking about this. It's crazy because if you show any type of emotion, you're a basket case. You're crazy. But how can you have your children removed and not have an emotion? There's something wrong with you.
Well, and that's I don't know if this is the right term. Right. And you're exactly right, Cynthia, but I don't remember if this was the right term. It's probably the wrong term. But isn't that a paradoxical? You know, when they say that you should not show emotion when you're upset because your children aren't home. But if you don't show emotion, you also look strange.
Correct.
So what exactly are you supposed to do?
Yeah, thank you,
What are you supposed to do?
Yeah, personality disorder. And I had to go through 3 psych evaluations. 3. And because you know why? They were okay, so my first the accusations against me first were that I was on drugs. When that was proven wrong by all my doctors and drug tests, they like removed the allegation, but then created a new one, which was that I have personality issues. I'm like, okay, what do I need to do to prove that wrong? So they sent me to a psych eval that I had to take, and it was like 2,500 questions. It took 6 hours. You can't fake this, by the way. Plus, I had to do a verbal one, completely normal. The only thing that I came back with was anxiety. CPS didn't like that, so they sent me to 2 more. When all 3 came back, the judge was like, "We're done with this."
Right.
Give her kids back.
Yeah, only until they find someone who actually likes, you know, CPS or is either paid off by CPS, and they, you know, they will write the letter. They will say that you're wrong. They'll say that the dad is bad. They'll say that the mom is, oh no, you have bipolar disorder, right? Oh, it just happens to say that my computer says that.
They paid a doctor from the ER to say I was a drug seeker. There was a note in my file from a doctor. I went to that hospital. I pulled all my records. I had never seen that doctor before. Never.
That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable. When my son was assaulted and battered, like I said, they closed it 2 months later, and had, you know, at the trial, dependency trial, had obviously completely ignored the fact that my son's school had filed the police report, that he had injuries on his face. His teacher files a police report. A DCF investigator arrives at the school simply because they were already in a dependency case, and this DCF investigator says, Well, see, here's the thing. I don't know where to put them. What do you mean you don't know where to put them? How about with their mother? Well, I don't know where to put them. And the way that my son had described it, and he was attacked when he was 9 by someone who was 40 years old. As he explained it, Hearst had said, I don't know where to put them. I feel unsure about putting them back in the house. Yet they never think that I've been compliant. I have never touched a drug. I barely drink alcohol.
Yeah.
They don't talk about that. They don't talk about that as the person. And what's ultimately strange is that my son not only was kept there in this permanent guardianship, the reason why it's a permanent guardianship is because my ex-husband never adopted him. I am my son's only legal parent, and I've always been his only legal parent. I also have that documentation. Yet, he makes it absolutely, the judge made it absolutely crucial, at least DCF had influenced him, had made it absolutely crucial that he keeps my son in his life when the divorce was already finalized, by the way. The divorce is already finalized during the dependency case. Yet, it seemed like it was...
That was like me, by the way.
Yeah, so it was like you, right?
Yep.
So you had that. Like I said, those 3 huge twists and turns. I had, like I said, filed for the dissolution of marriage because, of the strangulation, because he kidnapped my daughter. He was registered with the National Center. And I had filed that dissolution of marriage, and it was almost as if the court had completely ignored all of the documentation that was already there. I even had my domestic violence shelters even testify for me at the dependency hearings. They asked me if they, I wanted them to go up there, and they did. And when they had accused me of the mental health issues, the advocate went up to the judge and stated, Judge, you know that these mental health, you do know that these are things that happen after our clients are abused. You know that. You know that the mind can mentally change because of the abuse. The judge's response, I know. And nothing changed. So I did have all those documents. I had a lot of letters from every single domestic violence shelter that I went to. And part of the case that they did not want to accept was that I had already been going to counseling even before the dependency case was opened for domestic violence. Yeah, did you do that?
Yeah, I had been in counseling.
Yeah, I'd been in counseling, but
not just at church, but with a professional as well. So I had a lot.
Wow, that's yeah. Just in order for me to get through not having my kids at home, like it was obviously just working through the trauma, but they would not use that counseling to fulfill the parenting plan because they stated we can't use it because it's confidential. In other words, when you're in a domestic violence shelter, they protect their clients.
Right.
And they say, we will not to the president, not to the emperor, not to the sultan. We will not release any information about our clients. We will not tell you.
Even if it is,
what, subpoenaed?
Yes, thank you. I'm like, why can't I think of that word?
I think subpoenaed. Yeah, I think it is. I think it's subpoenaed.
Yeah, you're right. It is.
Interestingly enough, I don't know if they tried that. That's a good point. I don't know if they tried that, but my shelters would not talk about the issues that I worked through with the trauma. You know, and what's most important was that in all these cases are the lack of children's rights, I think.
They are not
And, you know,
allowed
in
to
the
have a
cases of my, right. And even in North Florida, it appears that they only allow children to speak if they're 12 years old. And I definitely believe that's something that needs to be changed. I do.
Oh,
I believe. I think across the board, I think federally, I think now every argument that people have that children are not developed mentally enough, psychologically, in order to make their own decisions, that's not true.
It's complete BS.
Yeah, it is. It is. And anybody who studies child psychology understands that children are a lot smarter than we think. So
well,
for every
and when you're placing them in trauma,
yep.
And you know, now here's the and you brought this up earlier, so I'm going to use this as the example. The when they get attached to the abuser, and then because my daughter is very attached to her father, and it's very difficult as a parent to make a decision on, does he need to be in their lives or not when he's making bad choices. Well, as a parent now, what I have to explain to my kids is, when daddy's not making healthy choices, because he has supervised visits under my discretion.
Good for you.
So
good for you. That's awesome that you pulled that off. That is definitely, that would be my ideal, but
it was my attorney. So if I have any assumption that he is not on the up and up, I'm sorry, but you don't get to talk to them. There's no visitation with them. And if you want to take me to court, let's go.
That is my goal right there, to find an attorney that actually has, you know, over the over 3 years of fighting this, I have yet to find an attorney in North Florida who actually has that kind of.
Well, you have to remember, he is on methamphetamines.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's true. My ex-husband isn't on that, but I mean, he is abusive, but it's not.
Well, so is mine. And but the fact that they would do drug tests and he's failing and not wanting to go to rehab and blah 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 blah, you know,
that's the kind of thing that makes me angry across the board. That's just, Cynthia, that's the not. And it's really, you know, for every time that my children had stated to the counselors that they wanted to go home, I remember those. You know, I would meet with the counselor of my son, you know, at the school. My son actually had essentially even angered DCF because of his intelligence. He had entered into this when he was 7 years old, and we would go to the counseling sessions, and he would pretty consistently say, I remember there was one day he said, I'm not sure what you people are doing. I need to see my mother every day. I don't understand this whole twice a week thing. He was bold. Once a
week for 2 hours, supervised in a room that was the size of a master bedroom, with toys that aren't yours and things that, you know, and somebody literally with a clipboard plus cameras everywhere. You're not allowed to get too close. You can't put your face by theirs, because then you get accused of whispering in their ears. I wasn't allowed to take them to the bathroom. Nothing.
Yep. That these are, I was under the same rules. And I, you know, and there was another even brilliant point where my son, you know, we had sat there, he had actually had 2 counselors, because, you know, it was my understanding, from what I had seen, that the first counselor was not able to handle the fact that my son was telling them that they were wrong. He was essentially fighting the system. You know, my daughter did that as much as she could, but she was 2 years old. I mean, she was 3. But, you know, he was 7, 8 years old fighting the system. One time we were, you know, did a counseling session in the DCF office, Florida DCF office. And I remember meeting him there and giving him a hug, and the counselor tried to condescend to him and say, hey, how are you doing really, right? looking at my son. I don't know if he was, I believe he may have been 8 by that point. He's sitting there, arms crossed, and he looks at the counselor and says, "Are there cameras in this room? Are there video cameras in this room?" And the counselor pretty much buckled and said, "Oh, no, there aren't cameras in this room. No,
Were there?
Oh, well, I mean, it was a DCF office. I mean, not visibly, but I mean, they're great at hiding. I mean, we know they say there aren't, but my son took a look, we looked at each other, and he's like, I would go to the monthly case plan meetings, and they would be grinding their teeth looking at me and say, your son is very intelligent, grinding their teeth, very intelligent, Yep. And it would bother them. It would bother them deeply that he knew the system, to the point where he came into certain times, certain visits, supervised visits, and he would look almost pretty much right into the video cameras. There was one time where he said, "Mom, I just wanted to let you know I'm starting to do projects in school, voluntarily, to learn about civil rights activists. So I just wanted to let you know that. Just wanted to let you know I'm starting to research Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr." And he would go off. There would be these amazing moments. Like I said, my daughter would take off her socks and shoes. She would say, "Absolutely not." She'd look at the monitors and say, "No, I'm not going back." Was this brought up? No. Did the guardian ad litem ever say anything? No. Video, no, and they don't. And that's another good point I'm sure you'll go into, Cynthia. I'm sure you know a lot more about that, but.
No, because again, CPS doesn't want to be proven wrong.
Right.
They don't want our kids to have a voice. They quiet them. They shush them. It blew me away because I was accused of, I was looking for a hair clip. I was accused of causing anxiety in my children.
Wow.
And
yes.
My visitations would be either canceled or postponed. My phone calls would be eliminated completely. Are you there?
Right. Yes, I am here.
Your camera.
Yes, let me see if Yep. Can you see me now?
Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
It was just horrible. Horrible. And my daughter, when these things would get brought up, you're not allowed to talk about it. You're not allowed to bring it up in a visit or anything. No. But she would somehow, for one time, this is an amazing example. I was told I was not allowed to initiate prayer with my children anymore. Because every visit we would have, we would pray together. There were three things every visit we would do. Number one, I still have it, this really thick book, like a scrapbook, and every visit I would create a theme and we would draw in it or create a craft or something and put it in the book.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
I would have my kids, because they would always say, "When can we come home? When am I going to see you again?" And you're not allowed to talk about the future.
Oh, you're not allowed to talk about the future because, what do they say? You don't know what's going to happen, so you can't lie to them.
So I created a game for my kids. We're going to meet. And every time we would have a visit, we would close our eyes and we'd pick a place that we're going to meet, tell each other what we're going to wear. So let's say we're going to go to Disneyland. What ride are we going to meet at? And we're going to spend the day doing this together. And it would give them a sense of a place to go when they needed me. I don't want to say, but when they needed me, they had a place they could go. That's two. And the third thing.
That's a good idea. I wish I would. Maybe I could start doing that right now. But that wish I had done that.
They need that. There's not even other words I can add to that. They just need that.
Yeah.
And it essentially gives them hope.
Okay, that's a great idea.
The third thing was that we would pray together.
Yeah. Which is important. That gives them hope.
I walked into a visit before they didn't have my kids in the room. And I was like, what's going on? They said, we need to talk to you. I said, okay, what? They said, you're not allowed to initiate prayer anymore with your children. I said, excuse me? They said, it is a form of abuse.
No.
Because you are forcing them to do something they don't want to do. I said, really?
Did you ask them whether it was something that they wanted to do? That's what I would say. Well, wait, when did they say that they didn't want to do this?
I did. I asked all of that. I was not given any answers. I was told you are not allowed to initiate prayer anymore with your children. So get this.
You know what I started saying? No, I'm listening.
I had an alarm on my phone because you know how sometimes you can get into a habit of praying, in the morning or at night or whatever. So I set an alarm on my phone that the kids knew. And it was a random time during the day, and it was just to pray. Let's just stop what we're doing to pray. No matter what we're doing. Well, I never was allowed to really bring my phone into the visit because you can't take pictures. There's no point. Yep. Well, I forgot, and my phone was in my purse. And guess what? That alarm went off, and both of my children jumped up and said, Mommy, it is time to pray. And I looked at that monitor and said, I didn't bring it up. I'm not initiating it, and I didn't pray. They both did. I didn't pray.
Good for you. Good for you. Good for you.
One thing you're not going to stop from all three of us, my two kids and myself, you're not going to try to take God away from us. You can take them away from me, but you're not going to take God away from any of us.
Right.
Period.
Right. Nope. God is right there with them. God is right there with them. Yeah. And it still hurts me. I mean, I just saw them Saturday, and it was essentially an unsupervised visit, which was a little strange.
You don't feel like you're ever actually unsupervised.
You don't feel like it. We were in a park, but it still kills me. Obviously every day, but it still kills me. My daughter, who's 5, comes up to me, and she runs back up to me, is crying. I mean, at this point, he is. My son tells me that he is apparently putting marks on my daughter now, who's 5, and is then accusing him of doing it, punishing him for something that he did.
Wow.
So I have these teams of people who I said, okay, we have got to prosecute this person. This is not, you cannot, he is touching my 5-year-old daughter. Absolutely not. This is stopping right now.
What kind of abuse it is? Like,
well, I don't even want to feign to think of things that I have not seen. I don't even want to think about that. But I have not personally seen these bruises on her. But according to my son, it's bruising. Like he says, he's grabbing her. You just grab her really hard. And so I guess he's sort of squeezing. He's making the bruises on her. And I suppose in order to not be investigated again, because he was investigated, for the assault and battery on my son during the dependency case, he doesn't want it to happen again. So instead, he says that my 9-year-old son is doing it. And he's literally the one who is protecting her.
I want to show you.
He's protecting her in this abusive household. He does certain things to protect his sister.
I want to show you this.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see this.
You can see it. Hold on.
Yes, I can.
Do you see her arm? There's 4 fingerprints. 4.
And you submitted that as documentation?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Do you know nothing was done about it until after I got my kids home, months later? Months later.
I would be, and she was how old? May I ask how old?
No. 7.
Yeah, she was 7.
8.
Yeah.
She was 6 when she was taken, 8 when I got her back, and it was that same year. 8. She was 8 years old.
Nope.
Now let me tell you this story.
Nope.
So I lived I didn't have restrictions as far as like where I could or couldn't go. We lived down the street from each other. Right. And my friend from church happened to have children at the same school. One day we went to go pick them up. Okay. We didn't park it. Lot. Right. Not my. We parked on a side street, right. But it was a very busy street with the 4-way lights, and I mean like arrows. So busy street. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear him go, and he sits forward, and I look at him, and I look in the direction of where he's looking, and my heart dropped. We see this small child running. He gets to the stoplight. We're looking for the adult that's supposed to be with him. Yeah, of course. Yeah. All of a sudden, the light turns green. The cross guard goes to step off. The boy, I about went because it was son. When I called to report that the person who had my children, my mother, was yards behind him, I was accused of stalking. Wow. And I got reprimanded. And then it was in the notes for the next court hearing that I was stalking my children. Stalking your own children because it's stalking. I was like, what are the odds of thousands of kids that go to this school that I wasn't on the school grounds. Even if I was, there was no orders that said I wasn't allowed to be there. Nope. But nothing was ever done or said. And I had a witness there, but nothing was ever done or said to her. Oh, my friend got out of the car. Right, even though your children were in her possession, there was nothing done to your mother. Correct. My friend gets out of the car because I beg him, please go keep an eye on my son. Please. He was 3 years old, 3 or 4 years old. He was little. So he gets out and he follows them because my mom has no idea who this guy is. Right. And he's standing there very close watching my son jump off this like bench right onto the curb of this busy street. And he said every parent was watching and nobody said anything. No. Oh, of course not. No, of course they weren't. That's I would be scared I would be jumping out of my skin. Oh, I was bawling my head off. I would this is yeah, I mean it's amazing how they twist things. I mean, even at the dependency trial, they had made a big deal out of the fact that I had cut my daughter's hair. I kid you not. It's okay for them to do it because that happens. Well, it's okay for them to do it. It's okay for someone who's registered as a kidnapper who she's living with to do it, right? Oh, he does it. Oh, that's fine. We've got a national organization on him. No, it's all right. Don't worry about it. You can do it. Yep. So I'm a hairdresser, by the way. Oh, are you? Oh, so you didn't do my hair. Yeah, fly across the country and I'll do it for you. I will fly across the country, and I will get over there to you. My daughter and my son would ask me to do their hair. Yeah. And I would bring stuff to the visit, and their hair would have already been done. Yeah. That's just
No more coffee. I just here. No more coffee. Just say, don't even want to, because I don't want it, you overthink. Yeah, even in my psychiatric evaluation, Dr. Heather had looked at me and said, was actually surprised. She had stated, well, you actually don't have, a pretty amazingly deep depression. You actually have more anxiety.
Yep. That's what
right. But actually have anxiety. And I was, at the time I was like, what do you mean I'm not depressed? What do you mean? And it was odd, my reaction, because I said, well, what do you mean I don't have my children? I need them. What do you mean? I'm thinking about, I can't believe that I don't have that. And I was just being honest. And, she had stated, well, no, she says, I mean, you're able to work for them. I mean, you're working. So it's not like you have chronic depression. You're on the floor. You're not moving, you're not. So even then there was nothing prescribed. The only thing that was originally prescribed in the original psychological evaluation was counseling that I was already doing. I was already doing it. Oh, but we can't use the counseling from the domestic violence shelter. We can't use that. I don't know. We can't use that. I don't know. We can't really use that. Why not? What do you mean? When I say that you put the children back into the abuse that I was trying to take them out of. What,
how did your case end?
Well, I mean, the dependency case itself ended in that permanent guardianship in the abuse after the assault and battery on my son, after the kidnapping, in 2019. So this is like May, June 2019. Ended as a permanent guardianship, and it states until further order of the court. So it was almost as if the judge was stating, basically, given the open to fight. Well, now it was almost like the judge was saying, well, now you can fight, go back to the court, fight for them now. And, the next step would be, establishing a parenting plan for my daughter, who's 5. Because interestingly enough, she's still there, but she was released from the dependency case and I was deemed safe to be with her. Yet.
But not have custody of her.
But not have custody of her. Yet. Right. When she seems safe to be with me, but we want to keep her with her older brother in a sibling placement. And I said, well, wait, obviously they're all equally important, but she also has a younger brother who lives with me. I had a DCF investigator in the next county who had come to the dependency trial and looked at the county. Listen, dependency trial, 2 counties fighting right in front of me, like coworkers fighting. A DCF investigator who had been doing it for 25 years looked at St. Johns County and stated, all 3 of these children are safe to be with their mother. I've seen the house. She works. The house is fine. All 3 of them can live there. St. Johns County fights them, fights Putnam County. No, we haven't seen the house, but we didn't say that the children are safe there. She says, Thompson said they're safe there. It's fine. I've spoken, and that county had actually protected their younger brother. And and as far as if you want a horror story part, in a way, their younger brother, who is now 20 months old, and has never.
Same father?
No, actually they all have different fathers, actually. So the only child that I share with my ex-husband is my daughter.
Yeah.
Only my daughter, right? Well, their younger brother, the only reason that I was able to save him was because I did a home birth. I did a VBAC home birth. And the only reason that, and the only reason why I did that is because when I was in these parental rights groups, and for anyone who's listening, there are a lot of great parental rights groups. where there are parents who know more things than anybody else would, but they literally told me, do not have him in a hospital.
How sad, because he would have been taken away right then and there.
Yeah, and listen, and they were, and the scary, creepy thing that sent chills down my spine was that they were absolutely right. Because when Thompson came into my home and my lawyer gave me the go and said, no, let her in, you have to trust me on this. Thompson, the investigator, came in and said, this is off the record, but I do want to let you know that there was a meeting in St. Johns County and they did plan to take your son. And my mother was sitting there. My mother was sitting there holding my son who had just been born. And I'm understand, don't really have neighbors I know, don't have a partner, don't have a husband, you know, trying to build this house for the children on my own. And I'm hearing this. And I said, so they did plan to take him. And I think that a part of the reason why Thompson, you know, my attorney had subpoenaed her and she had showed up to the trial and had stated, you know what, she's safe, you know, and I had to do it, you know, and you do anything for your kids is the point. Yeah. But the scary thing was that, honestly, if anybody needs advice, you should go into those, watch your show or go into those parental rights groups, because boy, do these parents know things. Yes. I didn't know that. If they hadn't told me that, if these parents hadn't told me that, I would have gone to the hospital. I want
to tell you this. There's a guy that I'm going to be interviewing this week. He is an advocate and an activist, and he is brilliant.
I would love to see him.
So I don't know what day it will be, but it will be this week. And he does a show also. The stuff that he told me, I was just like, I had no idea. Oh my gosh, you're blowing my mind right now. So I can't wait for this guy. So
I would love that. I think, everyone should see that. Yeah, definitely. I'm going to see that.
He was explaining to me how we refer to ourselves as a citizen, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Well, that means that we are underneath the government, like in a controlled way. We are. So he said, if you refer to yourself as sovereign, you're independent. But you can't. A lot of people go in and say, I am a sovereign citizen, which is an oxymoron.
Oh, it is. Okay.
So you have to just state you're sovereign, which means you fall underneath. Not there. You get to call out the judge.
Yeah.
He blew me away with things. So
that's amazing.
He's going to be a guest this week, and I hope
this is a go-to. Definitely. Yeah. This is a go-to. Definitely need to see that one.
Yes.
Definitely. Yeah, and that's why you know, like I said, you know, it just makes you wonder, you know, how strong your kids are, honestly. I mean, and I tell them that all the time, and I say you know, I do everything for you, and I try to give them information when, you know, nobody is looking, and I say, look, I've got, you know, this bigger legal team now, and I'll look at my son and I say that, look, I've got a lot of people on this, you know, deliberating plans, and, you know, we're attacking this. So, and I'm telling them that, and, you know, sort of like giving them hope. But, you know, like I said, my daughter is 5, and even my son at 5 liked him. But, you know, I am certain that my daughter, when she gets to 7 years old, when my son was,
Not necessarily.
It's well.
My daughter watched her father threaten to kill me. She watched him abuse drugs, choose drugs over us. She watched all of this and still begs to be around him. I need to see my dad.
So
he has an older daughter who's 18 who has talked to my daughter and said, Joe, this is who your dad is.
And
she goes, I know, I see, but there's a disconnect. She's almost 11, by the way.
It's almost 11. Okay.
Then my son, who's 8, my son is 8. He's younger and barely remembers.
Yeah.
But does not want to see him. Does not want to ever talk. Nothing.
Yeah. So it's a hit and miss.
I think it's actually the boy thing where they are very protective of their moms.
Yeah, they are. Actually, even my 20-month-old. Yeah.
I asked my son, why don't you want to talk to your dad? Why? Because I remember what he did to you.
Ooh. I mean, the other day, my 11-year-old son on Saturday had stated he's a hypocritical prick. I mean, so that's the direction that he's gone into, but he's 11. And he's gone into that direction. But yeah, I mean, it is sort of, like I said, she's 5. She doesn't understand why he's so mean, but yes, she is still defensive of him. Yeah, because she obviously isn't going to understand until she's older, and I tell her, look, now, and obviously I would wait until she's much older.
Yeah, but, I was gonna say, don't even.
She doesn't understand yet. Look, honey, you don't know what he did to you. And you need to understand how many people were after him. You don't remember.
Here's what I've been learning, okay? Truly.
Yeah.
Don't bother saying one negative thing about her dad, because all you're going to do is put a barrier between you and her. What your job is to pray for her. Pray that the truth is revealed and be there for her. And let me tell you how hard it is.
Yeah.
It's hard because I see in my daughter the hope I had, the little glimmers of hope she gets from him when he shows up to a visit finally, or he's clean for a week or whatever. She's like, see, I told you he can change. But let me tell you what she won't ever forget. She doesn't forget if I ever say if I'm like, oh, he's being a jerk. You called my dad a jerk. She'll remember that, but she won't. It's like she wants to block out anything negative that he can do. So don't. Just be there. And you don't need to remind her what she's gone through. She'll remember.
Right? Yeah. Even at 5, it just it gets under your skin, and even so protective.
I know. Trust me.
Yeah.
But because you're a sister in Christ,
yes,
you have to just trust God. It's hard.
It's so hard. That's so hard when it seems like he's been silent.
I've heard that when he's silent, that's when he's the closest.
Is that right?
That's what I've heard.
See, that's not one that I've heard. So that's the first time that I've heard that.
It's not one I prefer.
Right.
But have you asked God? Have you asked God to show you anything? Like, have you asked him to reveal to you why any of this is even happening? Because now that doesn't mean he's going to, but let me tell you one thing. Look at what he's allowing me to do right now. And just FYI, my face is everywhere. This is all live. I could get my kids taken away again. I am opening my mouth right now for thousands of families everywhere. And this show, by the way, it's not just nationwide anymore. It's become worldwide. I've got people in the UK, people in Australia, people everywhere that are reaching out and saying, I have a story. I have a story. This is happening here. You need to hear it.
Right. It's not excellent that we have these stories. It's excellent that people are getting information.
And so getting their story out and being told like, hey, you're not the only one. This is, I went through this. Like somebody on here commented, to hear you women basically yell my story is just bittersweet. Because what is one of the things that we go through? We go through being judged. We go through people turning their back on us. We go through family and friends basically putting their middle finger up and saying, you must have done something, because CPS doesn't just take your kids away for nothing.
And here are the myths that I would spend the rest of my life dispelling. The myths that I have heard parents say that their children are getting taken away because a social worker saw a multi-surface cleaner on their kitchen counter. Look, this happens now. For everything I say, I wish I had a name, a date, a place, and a time. But these are things that I have seen. It is true. If like I said, if children run into the street, well, yeah, you might want to take them away. This is not this misconception that it has to do with drug use,
or abuse,
or abuse, or that it has to do with alcoholism, or a DUI is absolutely false. It's absolutely wrong.
You could have dirty dishes in the sink. You could, and let me tell you, with my health issues, there are days I am like, I don't have the energy, but I force myself because of my fear.
Right. See, that's yeah.
But why do we need it? Why should we live in fear?
When are they going to come in?
Yeah, when are they going to knock on my door? Let me tell you, that is one of the most scariest things for me. And I'm 35 years old.
Right.
If I hear this.
I'm 37. Yeah, you looking good. I'm 37.
Thanks. If I hear this.
Yeah.
And I'm not expecting somebody to be knocking on my door.
Yeah.
I scream, don't touch the door. And I run to the door to see who it is.
I actually don't answer the door anymore. This is the kind of paranoia that has developed.
How sad! How sad!
Yeah, and this part is sad. But I mean, even now, that's even being touched on by comedians. If anybody knows, Sebastian Maniscalco, he has is an awesome comedian. But even he touches on it and says everything is different now from 30 years ago. And he starts off the skit by saying 30 years ago when someone knocked on your door, that was a happy moment.
Yeah, not
and
now.
He makes it into something funny. Like the family is hiding. They're crawling on the floor. But this is actually real life scenario. And yes, I mean, obviously I'm not as researched as you, Cynthia, but yeah, I've heard of a lot of things, even some pretty amazing things in the UK.
Yes.
All over the world where they're kind of doing the same system because they love their funding. And I wish I had been as researched about these people as I was in the beginning.
You can't be because you don't know. What was your perception of Child Protective Services? What was it? Child Protective Services, what? It's in the freaking name.
Right.
What do they do?
It's in. Right.
They protect kids.
Well, right.
That is what your perception was.
That's why society's perception, right? This is society's perception that.
How can you be educated on something that you don't know?
Right.
Is wrong.
That's true, and it was very sad that I had to be in the middle of the dependency case for me to learn that every single time that this, and they are, as I'm sure you've said before, subcontractors of the government. They are subcontractors of the government. In other words, they bring in money for the family court system. They are hired to do so. And only in the middle of the dependency case did I learn that they receive bonuses for every single child they kidnap.
Yes.
Every single one. I'm sure you remember the name of the act, but it was signed in 1994, 1995, where they get $4,000 a child. So every single child that they get, $4,000 first goes into that state. So why is it that when I contact, Governor DeSantis of Florida, that they state that there is nothing you can do except get a private attorney? Because I find out, and he has one of his aides sending me the letter after I send a letter to the governor. Why is that? Because
Let me ask
the state gets money. Because the state gets money. Because the state gets money. They get amazing money.
$1 billion industry. Billion.
Is it?
It is.
$1 billion.
Let me ask you, Laurie.
No.
What would you tell parents that are watching right now, whether they've been through it or haven't, or they're struggling right now? What would you tell them?
As far as what to do, Cynthia?
Just period. What is the first thing that comes to mind?
Do not call them.
So what do they do? Because that's something I've struggled with, so I get it. I know what you're saying when you say don't call them. But what do you do then when you need help?
When you need help. If we're going to start out with what I would tell them, obviously they know that the family court system is not going to help you. Child Protective Services is a misnomer. They're not going to help you. And when I tried to call domestic violence shelters, they're always full. So what do? What would I have done differently? I don't know if I would have done it. The problem is we had found our safe house. The only reason they came to us is probably because the ex-husband called.
See, that wasn't my
only because they arrived at my son's school. Right. Because they arrived at my son's school. Well, how exactly do you see the schools? Well, here's an answer. Well, here's one answer. And here's the problem, though. This is actually pretty impossible for parents who need to work, if you have a 2-parent household. But if you certainly can, what I would tell them, do everything you can to get them out of public schools, for one. Anybody out there, I think there are certain factors. If there are certain parents who do have the ability to do certain things, if you have the ability to homeschool, do it.
I homeschool.
Do it. If you have the ability to, there you go. I would love to do that, and I'm probably going to do that for boys.
But let me tell you something
they're
really
only
fast.
legal parent.
Let me tell you, when CPS got involved and I got my kids back before the case was closed, do you know they looked at me and told me I was not allowed to homeschool my kids?
Says what law? What law states this? That's what I started to say. What is the Florida statute?
I said, my kids, case closed. Bye-bye.
Yep. Are you here? You are not. I don't see you anymore.
And just FYI, there is an actual association, a homeschool association that protects parents who homeschool their kids against CPS.
That is amazing. Okay, so there are 2 resources. So I heard a couple of resources. Number 1, that you're going to have that guest on that we're going to need to see.
Yes.
Right? And what was his name again?
His name is Shorty. That's
what was his name again?
Shorty.
Shorty. Okay, Shorty. That was number 1. And then you said you also had a website of, you said
CPS attorney Rolodex.
Defense attorneys. Right?
Yes.
Okay. That's another thing we have to do. Okay. Okay. And
And
what was
I
the third?
need the
You just said the
families.
third
I
too.
need everybody to just, if you have an open case or you need a civil rights attorney in your state, county, I need you to go put your information in that website. Because the only way I can start building this website up with attorneys is all of you parents going on there and putting in your information. Because I got to show them, look at all these families that need help. We're going to do the footwork. I need you guys to go to the website.
Yep.
That's it.
That's amazing. Yeah, that is a part of it. And I think, and I think, I mean, well, what do we do in that situation? I can't think of anything else besides homeschooling, because the problem is they're everywhere. So, and that's not to create, you know, paranoia in all the parents that are listening right now.
Right.
But, honestly, keep your children as close as possible, like all of the time. That's probably what I would say. All of the time, as close as possible.
Teach them.
Go to church.
Are
you going to keep them with you? Go to church. Yeah.
Teach them their rights.
Right. And I think that's true. Yeah. And as far as the parents' rights movement, yes, it is going, and there is legislation being enacted, but I believe that it should also come from the bottom up. I think we also need to work on creating children's rights in the states, in countries. I think children's rights need to be emboldened. I don't think it should only be taking funding away from Child Protective Services. I think it should also be attacking from the bottom. And that's hard because obviously it's bureaucratic, and the problem is, how do we get better guardian ad litems? How are we going to change that system?
The problem isn't the guardian. The problem is that they work with CPS. They're not, the children don't have a voice.
Right.
But that's why I want people to, I just watch my guest.
Yeah.
Pay attention to when he's going to be on, because I will announce it so that you guys can get a little bit more education, because he's pretty knowledgeable.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So, now, Laurie, I do have to go because I got another person waiting. It was so awesome to talk to you.
This was great. Thank you very much for, you know, allowing me to do this for my children. You know,
absolutely. And do me a favor, in a few months, when things change, come back on. I want to hear.
I would love to. Yeah, when everything all the things that I'm getting done, and the teams that I'm building. But
yes,
yeah, I will absolutely let you know, Cynthia. Thank you.
And throw your info on the website.
Oh, great. Oh, yeah, I will find that website. Absolutely. Yep. Very nice.
You can ask my assistant on the Facebook page.
Great. I can do that. Oh, you mean in Messenger too?
Yep. Right. That's my assistant. She'll help you out.
Excellent. I appreciate your time. That is excellent. And look forward to talking to you again. That's awesome. Thank you for doing this for my children too.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.